The clock in Olivia's room showed 7 p.m. She sat on her bed, her knees pulled up to her chest, her arms wrapped tightly around them. She stared at the blank wall in front of her, trying to ignore the sound of laughter coming from outside her door. She could hear her twin sisters giggling, talking about boys and the latest gossip at school. Olivia wished she could join in, but the thought of leaving her room and facing them filled her with anxiety. She knew she should be happy and carefree like her sisters, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was judging her, watching her every move. Olivia, the oldest of 3 kids, grew up in a small town where the weight of expectations and pressure from her parents seemed to bear down on her with each passing day. Despite trying her best, Olivia often felt like she wasn't good enough. Olivia's kind and thoughtful nature was often overshadowed by her anxiety. She would sometimes act out, and she engaged in negative behavior in the past as a way to cope with her anxiety. She felt like her past mistakes added to the weight of her perceived failures, making it difficult for her to believe in her worth. Olivia's fearfulness often held her back and made it difficult for her to see the positive aspects of her life. She had a deep love for books and a natural talent for writing, but she found it hard to pursue these interests due to her fear of failure. She often compared herself to others, feeling like she fell short in every way. Olivia worried constantly about what other people thought of her, and expressing or standing up for herself in social situations also proved to be challenging. Even small tasks, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for help at a store, filled her with a sense of dread. Olivia's anxiety had also impacted her faith. She believed in God, but she struggled to fully embrace the person she was created to be. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts, but it didn't seem to help. Suddenly, she remembered the diary sitting on her bedside table. She reached for it, flipping through the pages until she found a blank one. She grabbed the pen and poured her emotions onto the page as she wrote.
Dear Diary, today was another tough day. I woke up feeling anxious as usual, and it took me quite a minute to convince myself to leave the house. I hate feeling like this. It's like there's this weight on my shoulders, and no matter how hard I try, I can't shake it off. School was a blur today. I couldn't focus on anything. Lunchtime was the worst. I sat alone, watching as my classmates laughed and chatted around me. I want so badly to connect with them, to be a part of their world, but I just can't seem to find the courage to do it. It's like I'm invisible, like I don't matter. I can't seem to make anyone happy no matter what I do. My parents are always expecting so much from me, and I'm trying my best to live up to their expectations, but it's never enough. Sometimes I just want to give up and stop trying altogether. And then there's God. I know He loves me, but sometimes it's hard to believe that when I feel like I'm constantly falling short. I feel like I'm not pretty enough, smart enough, or talented enough to actually make a meaningful impact in the world. It's like I'm constantly second-guessing myself, and I can never seem to escape these negative thoughts. It's exhausting. I just wish I could break free from it all. I catch myself daydreaming about being a completely different person, someone who's confident and sure of herself. It would be amazing to be confident and know what I'm meant to do with my life. But right now that seems like a far-fetched dream. I feel so discouraged. I'm starting to question if God really has my back. It feels like nothing is happening for me. I keep asking God for a sign, for something to show me that He's there and that He's listening, but there's just silence. And now, I'm starting to fear the future. What if I'm stuck like this forever? What if I never find a way out of this cycle of anxiety and self-doubt? I don't know if I can keep living like this. I know I need to trust God, but it's so hard to do that when everything feels so hopeless. I just wish there was something, anything that could show me that things will get better.
Olivia finishes writing in her diary, closing it with a sigh. She knows that tomorrow will be another challenging day, but she feels a sense of release from having put her thoughts and feelings down on paper. She turned off the lamp on her bedside and crawled into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin, and shut her eyes. She drifts off to sleep and starts dreaming. In the dream, she found herself standing in a garden. As Olivia walked through the garden, she was struck by its beauty and tranquility. The garden was filled with lush greenery, colorful flowers, and the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. The air was fresh and clean. and a gentle warmth radiated from the sun above. As Olivia ventured further into the garden, she realized she wasn't alone. She saw 10 women from the Bible who were waiting for her, seated on the grass. Mary smiled at Olivia and welcomed her to the group. Olivia approached the group, her heart beating rapidly as she wondered what she could possibly have to say to these women, who had accomplished so much and faced incredible challenges. She was nervous about asking them questions and revealing her insecurities, afraid that they would judge her or think less of her. However, she noticed that each woman had a unique glow about her. She felt drawn to them and wanted to know more about each one. Olivia found herself sitting next to Esther, the brave queen who risked her life to save her people from destruction. Olivia tried to act calm and collected, but inside she was freaking out. Esther was dressed in a richly colored robe and wore a jeweled crown upon her head. Her beauty was undeniable, but Olivia understood that Esther's beauty was more than just skin deep.
"Hi, I'm Olivia,"
she said, extending her hand. Esther's eyes met hers, and she smiled warmly, her voice soft and pleasant, yet with an air of regal grace.
"It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Olivia. I am Esther."
Olivia couldn't help but chuckle.
"I know who you are. You're kind of a big deal."
Olivia had always admired Esther's bravery and had read the story of her courageous act many times, but hearing her speak about it firsthand was a different experience altogether. She had never shared her struggles with anyone before, but there was something about Esther that made her feel comfortable and safe. Esther listened attentively as Olivia opened up about her fears and anxieties. She talked about how she often felt like she didn't belong, and how she didn't feel like she had a purpose in life. Tears filled her eyes as she talked about the weight of her anxiety and how it made her feel like she was constantly on edge.
"I feel like I'm not strong enough. I'm so afraid all the time. I don't know if I have what it takes to be brave, like you."
Olivia, you already have what it takes. You have faith in God, and that is all you need. Faith and fear cannot coexist. The spirit that God gave us is not one of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. Your presence in this world serves a purpose, and God will provide you with what you need to fulfill the purpose He has given you. And remember, you don't have to do it alone. God is with you always.
Olivia nodded, feeling empowered by Esther's wise counsel. A woman suddenly appeared before Olivia, surprising her. It was Rahab, the harlot who helped the Israelite spies. Rahab had an intense gaze, with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Rahab wasted no time in sizing up Olivia.
"You must be the one who's been grappling with her past mistakes. Well, let me tell you something, my dear. You can't change the past, but God can use anyone, even the least likely, to accomplish great things. He sees your potential, not your mistakes. All He asks is that you turn to Him. He's merciful."
Despite being caught off guard by Rahab's directness, Olivia felt a wave of relief after hearing her words. For so long, she had felt weighed down by her past mistakes, believing that they defined her and limited her potential. But Rahab's words reminded her that God was bigger than her past, that He could use even the most broken and flawed individuals for His purposes.
"Rahab, how did you find the courage to help the spies, even though it put your own life in danger?"
Olivia asked, her voice filled with curiosity and admiration. Rahab looked at Olivia with a steady gaze and said,
"There are moments when we have to decide between what feels safe and what is right. I knew that helping the spies was the right thing to do, and from the stories I'd heard about God's power and faithfulness, I trusted that He would protect me. And He did. When the Israelite spies came to my city, I saw an opportunity. I knew that if I helped them, they would spare me and my family when they conquered Jericho. And so I used my wit and my charm to deceive the king's men and get the spies to safety."
"I wish I could be as bold as you,"
Olivia said, a note of longing in her voice. Rahab reached out and grasped Olivia's hand firmly.
"You can be. You just need to have confidence in God's power. Have faith that He will guide you through any tough situation."
Olivia nodded, feeling a sense of determination welling up inside her. As she moved on to the next woman, She felt excited for what lay ahead. Sitting on Olivia's left was Mary Magdalene, the woman who was set free by Jesus and became one of his closest followers. She was there when Jesus was crucified, and she was the first person to see him after he rose from the dead. Mary's story was not just a historical account, but a living testimony of the power of God's love and grace to transform lives.
Mary, how did you find the courage to follow Jesus even when it was dangerous and unpopular?
Mary Magdalene's eyes sparkled with deep joy and love for her Savior.
After experiencing the love of God, nothing else seemed more important to me. I was willing to devote my life to Jesus, even if it meant facing persecution.
Well, sometimes it feels like I'm not good enough. Like I don't have what it takes to be a true follower of Jesus. What if I keep making mistakes? What if I mess up and disappoint God?
Mary Magdalene's eyes softened.
Olivia, I was far from perfect. But that didn't stop Jesus from loving me and changing my life for the better. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting your heart right with God and being willing to surrender your life to Him. God knows that we are not perfect. He knows that we will make mistakes, but He loves us anyway.
Olivia felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Maybe she didn't have to have it all together all the time.
Remember,
Mary Magdalene said, as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear,
you are loved and valued by God just as you are. Allow Him to heal your hurts and transform your heart, and you will find the courage to follow Him wherever He leads you.
Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. She had been so focused on her shortcomings and failures that she had forgotten that Jesus was in the business of forgiveness and transformation. A woman went around distributing cups of water. She approached Olivia and spoke to her.
God sees you and knows you. He loves you even amid your flaws and failures. Drink from the water of life, and you will never thirst again.
Olivia immediately recognized her as the Samaritan woman who conversed with Jesus at the well. Olivia smiled and accepted the cup of water from her. Sitting across Olivia was Deborah, the judge and prophetess who inspired the Israelites to a mighty victory over their enemies. Deborah wore simple clothes and had her hair braided, but her piercing gaze and commanding presence made her seem larger than life. Deborah spoke to Olivia about the importance of using her voice to speak the truth, standing up for what was right, trusting in God's guidance, and being obedient to His calling. Deborah spoke about her leadership role as a judge in Israel.
Though it was a daunting task, I was certain that God had called me to this role. When God calls us to do something, we must be obedient, even if it appears challenging. We can rest assured that God will provide us with the necessary strength to accomplish it.
Deborah paused for a moment, giving Olivia time to process her words before she continued speaking.
You have a talent God has given you. Use it boldly, and don't let anyone tell you that you are not good enough.
Olivia was surprised by Deborah's words. She had never thought of herself as talented.
But Deborah,
Olivia said hesitantly.
I'm not sure if what I have to offer can make a difference.
Deborah leaned in and said,
Olivia, do not underestimate the power of God working in and through you. He can take the smallest offering and turn it into something great. All He asks is that you use what you have to glorify Him.
Deborah showed Olivia that there were no limits to what God could do through a willing heart. God could use her in ways she never thought possible. She knew that it wouldn't be easy, but was willing to step out in faith to make a positive impact in the world. When Olivia looked up, she saw Ruth standing at a fruit tree, motioning Olivia to join her. As Olivia drew closer, Ruth gently picked a ripe fig and handed it to Olivia with a smile.
Here, try this. It's one of my favorite fruits.
Olivia took the fig and took a bite, savoring its sweetness.
It's delicious.
Ruth chuckled softly.
God has provided so much for us, hasn't He? Even amid hard times, He gives us these little moments of joy.
Olivia nodded in agreement.
But sometimes it's hard to see the good, especially when I feel so anxious and overwhelmed.
I understand. I've been there too. But remember, God is with us even in our darkest moments. He sees our struggles and He cares for us deeply.
Olivia found comfort in Ruth's words. She looked around at the lush orchard and the bright blue sky and felt a sense of gratitude for the beauty around her. Ruth spoke to Olivia about the importance of loving others unconditionally, being faithful in all circumstances, and trusting in God's provision.
God blesses those who are faithful. Even when things seem hopeless, we have to trust that God is working behind the scenes.
But Ruth, how did you find the courage to leave everything behind and follow God? Wasn't it scary?
Ruth smiled warmly at Olivia.
Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to trust. But when you trust in God, even amid uncertainty, you'll experience a profound sense of peace.
Olivia thought about Ruth's words.
Thank you, Ruth. I needed to hear that.
Anytime, my dear. We're all in this together.
Ruth said, as she wrapped her arms around Olivia. As Olivia and Ruth enjoyed the sweet figs beneath the fruit tree, they noticed Naomi approaching from a distance. Naomi led Olivia to a nearby olive tree, its branches heavy with ripe olives. She plucked one and handed it to Olivia.
Now try this, my dear. These olives are not like figs, but they hold a special meaning.
Olivia bit into the olive, noting its bitterness.
It's different.
Naomi chuckled, amused by Olivia's response.
Indeed, life can be a bit like that too. When life gets tough, it's like God's way of molding and shaping us, just like how olives are processed to make oil. So, when you feel pressed by challenges, think of it as an opportunity to grow and transform, like olives turning into something valuable.
Olivia listened intently as Naomi continued.
Think of the olive tree like your faith. It has deep roots, much deeper than other trees. So even when life gets stormy, stay rooted in your faith. The olive tree can also handle harsh conditions and still bear fruit.
What does that teach us?
Naomi replied, her hand resting on the trunk of the olive tree.
It means you can push through and continue to offer your unique gifts to the world, even when life gets challenging. Remember, Olivia, you are like the olive tree, strong, resilient, capable of handling anything that comes your way. God's love and strength are always with you.
Olivia gazed at the olives hanging from the branches and smiled, understanding the profound lesson the olive tree had imparted. As Olivia made her way back to the other women, she decided to take a seat between Sarah and Hannah. Sarah was the wife of Abraham who bore a child in her old age. Sarah's story had always fascinated Olivia, wondering what it must have been like to believe in a promise God made when everything seemed impossible.
But how did you do it, Sarah? How did you keep believing when it seemed like your situation was impossible?
Sarah smiled warmly at Olivia before answering her question.
It wasn't easy. There were times when I doubted. I even laughed at the idea of having a child at my age. But I learned to trust in God's faithfulness. And in the end, He blessed me with a son. God is faithful, my dear, even when we are not. We can rely on the fact that He always keeps His promises.
Sarah made Olivia realize that even the strongest of believers face moments of doubt and uncertainty.
By focusing on God's promises and His truth, we can fight against our worried thoughts and find peace in Him. Even when we may not understand what's happening around us, we can be confident in the fact that God is in control and that He is working all things together for our good.
Hannah, who had been quietly listening, added her own thoughts.
Pray always with boldness. Be open with God in prayer and pour out your soul, especially when you're feeling troubled. You find comfort and strength by being honest and vulnerable with God. Prayer is a wonderful way to express our worries and fears to God and to ask for His help and guidance. Even if we don't receive immediate answers to our prayers, we can trust that God hears us and will answer in His perfect timing.
Yes, sometimes the things we want most in life don't come easily, or we want things to happen right away. But when we trust God, we can trust that He has a plan that is greater than our own desires.
Finally, sitting next to Sarah was Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary was dressed in a blue dress, her hair flowing down her back in waves. Mary's kind face and compassionate demeanor drew Olivia in immediately, and she was eager to hear what she had to say. Mary stood up and extended her hand to Olivia.
"Come, let's go pick some flowers,"
she said with a smile. As Mary and Olivia bid farewell to the other women, they made their way toward a nearby field of flowers. As they walked, Mary pointed out different types of flowers.
You know, Mary, I've always wondered if Jesus had a favorite flower.
Mary chuckled.
"I'm not sure, but I have a feeling he'd appreciate them all."
Olivia's eyes widened.
Even dandelions?
Mary nodded with a smile.
"Yes, even dandelions. They may not be the most glamorous flower, but they still have their own unique beauty."
Olivia plucked a dandelion from the ground and held it up to Mary's nose.
Do you smell that, Mary? That's the smell of Jesus' favorite flower.
Mary took a whiff and laughed.
"Well, who knew?"
As they picked flowers, Mary continued to speak words of encouragement to Olivia.
"God delights in the beauty of his creation, and that includes you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, with a unique purpose and calling. Allow yourself to accept and appreciate your unique qualities and be open to how God can use you for his kingdom purposes."
Olivia couldn't help but feel a sense of joy and freedom. She twirled around with her arms outstretched, as if she could embrace the entire world.
You know what, Mary? I feel like I can be myself around you. I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not.
With a smile, Mary joined Olivia as they twirled around. Olivia slowly opened her eyes and sat up in bed. She rubbed her tired eyes and took a deep breath, trying to fully awaken from her sleep. As she sat there, she realized that the dream had felt so real. It was as if she had really been sitting in a beautiful garden, talking to the women of the Bible. She glanced over at her bedside table, where her diary sat. She switched on the bedside lamp and reached for the diary and a pen. She began to write down everything that she could remember about her dream.
Dear diary, I just had the most amazing dream. In my dream, I met with some incredible women from the Bible who shared their stories of faith with me. It was like they knew everything about me and the struggles I'd been facing lately. It was so comforting to know that I'm not alone and that they faced similar struggles too. Talking with Esther was so surreal. Just like Esther, who was made queen for a specific time and purpose, I am now convinced that God has a unique purpose for my life that I am meant to fulfill while I am on this earth. Rahab's story was really encouraging. It reminded me that no matter what my past looks like, God can still use me. That was really reassuring for me, as I often experience feelings of embarrassment and not being good enough. Getting to know Mary Magdalene was definitely a highlight for me. It was amazing to hear how God transformed her life and how He can do the same for me. Mary Magdalene emphasized that true devotion to Jesus doesn't require perfection, but being willing to give up control of one's life and submit to God's will. Then there was Mary, who has inspired me in so many ways. She reminded me that God sees and loves me, no matter what my flaws or fears might be. That was comforting for me to hear since I struggle a lot with self-doubt. Whenever I start to feel anxious or inadequate, I will remember Deborah's story and remind myself that God can use me in powerful ways, even when I feel weak. This gives me the confidence to pursue my passion for writing, something I had always been interested in, but had never really had the courage to pursue. I want to use my talent for writing to share God's love and inspire others, just like these women have inspired me. Ruth was everything I had hoped she would be like, sweet and humble. What I learned from her is that sometimes God calls us to take risks and step out in faith, even when things feel uncertain. I'll be trying to do just that, stepping out of my comfort zone and taking risks as Ruth did. It's scary, but God is faithful, and I trust that He will take care of me. Sarah and Hannah showed me the importance of devoting time to prayer and studying and meditating on God's Word. I finally learned to let go of my worries about the future and focus on the present moment. It's such a relief to not be constantly anxious about what's to come. Instead, I'll be taking it day by day, and I'll try to be patient and trust in God's timing and not get too caught up in my own desires and plans. When I woke up, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was just a dream, but maybe it was a sign that things could get better. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I'm holding on to the hope that things can change. Perhaps soon I'll be able to break free from these chains and live the life that God has called me to live. Yours truly, Olivia.
As Olivia closed her diary after finishing writing, tears welled up in her eyes. She realized that this was a turning point in her life. She knew that she had much to overcome, but she also knew that she was not alone. She had God who loved her unconditionally, and the examples of strong and faithful women like Deborah and Mary to help her on her faith journey. As she lay back down on her pillow, Olivia whispered a prayer of thanks, grateful for the beautiful dream that had changed her life. She closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep, feeling hopeful.